Hey everyone, welcome to the Meeting Your Soul podcast. I'm Farah, your host, and this week I have one of my dear friends from high school. We actually met on the cheer squad. Whoop whoop, CHS.
Go bikes.
Really good. We met. I gotten on the squad, and then we instantly became friends, and have been friends ever since. And I was just in Baltimore because Shannon lives over in Baltimore, and we just went, and I was able to spend some quality time with her. And we were talking about life, and I was like, "You got to come on the pod. You got to come on. We got to talk about some shit and like just get into it and be able to spitball and have a good time and share all of your wisdom and experiences with other people because you've been on a wild ride, and I can't wait to hear more about it and share it with all of you. So thank you for coming on the pod today.
Of course. It really is a pleasure. It's very fun and exciting. Like you said, when we just got to see each other and reconnect and rekindle, it was the best. So yeah, getting to share that on your platform, I'm truly honored.
Oh, I know. And then we also went to college together. So we spent our college years together and then have gone on a few trips and have always stayed connected. And I think that that is truly unique. I recognize that not a lot of people maintain friendships over that span of time. And I think that after us spending time together recently, I was like, it's because I love you and you are a part of my soul. I just can't imagine my life without you. So thank you again. And I couldn't have thought of anyone better for us to dive into our topic of friendship today and about a bunch of other things. But we're actually going to start with your self-discovery journey because we've kind of discussed this to a certain extent over the years. And I know that you've had these highs and low points and just have gone through quite a bit. And so I'd really love for you to share kind of what some major highlights are for you or pivotal points within your life that you feel like you've really understood yourself on a deeper level.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a heavy question. It's a huge question. You laid out, what the topic of the pod was going to be. And I was like, okay, yeah, like how to really sit down and hammer all of this crazy thing out that we call life. So I mean, like, when someone asks, like, what's your self-discovery journey looked or felt like over the years, I could go 1,000 places, but starting at the very beginning, I have to say that I was incredibly fortunate to have been raised by such a fiercely independent and self-actualized, and we'll get into that word, what that means a little bit later, woman. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the standards were set very high for me at a young age. And thanks to my mother's own example and her constant support, I never had any doubts in my own abilities to be able to reach or exceed whatever the standard was.
Good old Sheila.
And so what were you saying?
I say good old Sheila. She is a power.
Right?
She loves you
Powerhouse.
so dearly too. I love it. Like ever since she was young, and she's like, "Oh, Shannon," and I just love the way that she speaks to you and the relationship that you guys have. It's really special.
Those Gemini mama bears. I mean, right?
True though.
They can be a little intense, certainly hardcore, but they will be their child's biggest cheerleader ever. So yeah, my mom's been hyping me up from the very start. But like I was saying, she definitely was someone that really led by example. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I thought of the word to describe her, and I was like, yes, the self-actualized woman. So I'm sure we can all remember when we first learned going back to Maslow's hierarchy, Psych 101,
Yeah. Well, oh,
going back to the concept of self-actualization and like what that means. Like, you remember about this?
yes, yes. Well, and then I forgot to mention. So Shannon and I both were in psych. We both earned our psych degrees, and then you have your master's in sports psychology. Yes.
Right. Grad school for sports psych. So mental skills training. And I mean, I've always loved psychology in every single aspect. I was like, I'm going to be a sex psychologist. I'm going to be a relationship therapist. I'm going to be a sports psychologist. And sports is definitely, sports and performance, definitely a passion of mine, what sticks for me. But yeah, I love the whole aspect of just better understanding how the human brain works, how us weirdos all make it along in this life.
Like human behavior. I think that's always been a common thread with us, is that we love to like
Mhm.
understand people and why they do what they do. And so, and I think we always will then like break it down, like, so do you think that this is like, this is probably why we end up getting into like really random conversations, but it's like, you're like watching someone, you're like, why did they do that? Like, what do you think the motivation was? And like, and then we like start breaking it down. But I think that there is a common thread, that there is a hierarchy of needs. And like, I think once you start to understand
Mhm.
concepts and these foundational, like really findings within psychology, you just understand people on a more, it's like, a less biased, but also like, so I think slightly less biased kind of perspective, because you recognize that we're all striving for the same things, or to a certain extent.
For sure. It's looking for an explanation, and with age and maturity, you kind of realize, some things you really can't explain, but like we kind of work from a place of looking for intent and looking for an explanation to people's behaviors. For better or worse. People sometimes need justifications, but if you have no idea where they're coming from, then it typically leads to more misunderstanding. So just trying to find a common ground and understanding from that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so you're thinking, so when you thought of your mom, which I love that you're pulling this in. I was like, I didn't know this is the direction I was going to go, but I am jazzed and can't wait to learn more. So, the self-actualized woman, what is, when you think of this, what comes to mind?
So I'm going through this concept. And so just a quick rundown for people that maybe don't remember, or maybe they had never learned this. So it's set up like the pyramid, the same way that it looks like, the nutrition pyramid. So on the bottom, we're showcasing our physiological needs, the basics, air, food, shelter, that type of thing.
Mhm,
And atop that, then we have our need for safety, which is just, our health and our security.
mhm,
And then the two tiers above that encompass our psychological need. So we're looking at, the feelings of love and belonging. And
mhm,
this is where friendships and more of intimate relationships come into play, followed by esteem, which specifically the feelings of accomplishment and autonomy. For some people, status is a big part of that too.
mhm,
But
mhm,
then at the very top of that pyramid is where the self actualized human comes into play. And this is where one actually develops a complete belief in their own potential. And so that's why I'm saying that I had the example of a woman that was that,
mhm,
and then in turn instilled that into me.
mhm,
And so, what it actually means, these are the commonly developed characteristics of self actualized people. One, to be self accepting, to be spontaneous, responsible, someone that's realistic, autonomous, someone that enjoys solitude and privacy, and the kind of people that know or at least see value in the journey as opposed to the destination.
mhm, mhm.
Well, you have thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more, actually, and I think that that's been something that I've found over time, but I don't think I necessarily had that when I was younger. I think it took years for me to be able to do that, and I don't know if I even really recognized it within psychology, but more through spirituality and through the yogic path, that I was able to achieve that and really incorporate it into my life on a very um mental, spiritual, and physical way. And it took me a lot of I think a lot of pitfalls, stumbling quite a bit for me to be able to arrive there.
Hey, what did I just say? The destiny, or it has to be the journey over the destination, right? So,
Facts, facts. Yeah.
exactly. Still learning. I mean, and so I say all this to say that for me, I had a very strong self identity pretty early on. I could probably genuinely say
Yeah.
at about the age of 13, I possessed almost nearly all of the traits of a self actualized person. And not a lot of people can say that. And that's not to say that I've carried those traits, completely confident and being completely self accepting and responsible 100% of the time, because absolutely not. Farrah knows me, so she can vouch. but at my core, like, yes, I truly am. And I mean, in large part, I feel like that leads me into something else that we're going to talk about, which was how solitude and our friendships and intimate relationships can play a part as well into that
Yeah,
self journey.
totally. Well, and what part do you feel like that has played for you? And or with
Yeah.
solitude in particular? Because you had moved to and I don't know if this is what you're going to go into, but like you had moved to Baltimore on your own. Like, so we grew up together. You were living in Seattle, but you always were really independent though. And I think that that goes into play with what you're talking about of always just being very aware of your potential. Like, over the years that I've known you, over a couple decades I've known you, like you've always been like, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. And like you always pursue it. And I've always admired that about you. And one of the many other things that I admire about you is that your ability to speak your own truth and to be able to know who you are and to honor that. And I've always just like, I think I'm a people pleaser by nature. And so for me to be able to have someone as an example of that, like I always admired it because it was something I was always afraid to do, which you laugh at me when I say this because you're like, Fair, you were always just wild out.
Right? Come
I,
on.
but I was
No,
like,
no,
but
Bear, you gave me a lot of confidence in situations too. Like you seemed fearless to me as a child, and I was just like, oh my God, this girl.
right. But it all takes, and like so much of the power of friendship is like how we influence one another over time. And like I think you gravitate towards people that have certain traits that you don't have, and that also you have shared values, and there can be kind of a diversity within that, because I think then that's how you grow as individuals with one another. But I think we've definitely gotten into some precarious situations in our years. And I think, but we always knew like, we're going to be fine. Like, we're going to figure this out and we're
Right.
going to stick together and everything's going to pan out. Like, we will, Sam's got a brand new bag. We will always sit out. But but to have fun along the way too, I think is also really important. And that's definitely never been a shortage within our friendship. But,
Now we're very fortunate that I would say we've never gotten burned by any of our decisions or actions that we could have probably admitted were reckless. But it was still, like you said, within reason. Like we never got ourselves in more trouble than we knew how to handle.
calculated risk is what I always say is a big thing.
Damn.
I will risk certain, like that's when you're like you're fearless. I was like, it's always like not always calculated. Sometimes I'm a little spontaneous, I could be a little impulsive some days. But I would say that there's more
Mhm.
often than not, I'm like, I've already probably thought about worst case scenario because I'm actually slightly catastrophizing at all times. I've already thought through those things and I'm like, I don't think this isn't half bad. Like, we'll figure this out and like we'll be fine. But if there is like, or if I'm really unsure, or if I'm scared, like if I'm really scared, but I think at this point in my life, I've faced a lot of my fears, and being alone was actually very much one of my biggest fears in life because I'd never really been alone before.
Mhm.
I'd never lived alone before. This was like the first time I had ever lived alone. So there was a lot of things, I think, even at this stage of my life, where I may have been fearless in certain areas, but in other areas, scared shitless, in all honesty. And so I think, again, having people around you to help like kind of move through those times can be a really helpful and necessary too. But I don't
No,
even
yeah, that is like
press. I know.
exactly where I was going with this because yeah, there's, some people we know that it is like their worst nightmare to be alone or to be sitting in quiet, just themselves. Um,
Yeah.
and I was very comfortable with solitude. And I mean, it's actually like a highlighted element, I would say, of my journey. And that's why I was kind of surprised when I like did the throwback to the hierarchy of needs. I was like, oh, like I found that super interesting that that was a like common description, or at least part of the description of someone being self-actualized. Because, like with everything in life, there needs to be a balance.
Mhm.
And, like there's people which, seeing the way that the current generation is going now, where it seems like in overabundance potentially of solitude and them not being properly socialized,
Yeah.
which then, like, can lead to the issues of, emotional regulation and not being able to really accept or connect with reality. And so, like, while I did have a lot of solitude, and I would even probably say some of the most substantial periods of growth in my self discovery actually came out of moments of it just being me with my thoughts.
Mm,
Prime example, like you were saying, when the pandemic widely hit, and I took the opportunity to make one of the biggest changes of my life at the time, leaving the city that I knew and that I loved, the only state that I'd ever lived in, and moving about as far as you can geographically go within the United States, all the way out here to the East Coast without knowing a single soul.
yeah.
And it was just that period of nesting and learning more about, what makes me tick and what type of environments do I thrive in? What am I lacking? What elements of my life do I need to foster and incorporate more consistently?
Mm,
And I think change just forces us a lot of times,
yeah.
to those thought process, and forces us to evaluate a lot of that. And it's kind of like that perfect meeting where the universe is, always giving us lessons.
Yeah.
But when you actually have the clarity of mind and the tools at your disposal to learn from those lessons, and then I sort of think of it like in a video game, like checkpoint, then you get to go on to the next level. And
Yeah.
that's legitimately kind of how it felt once I got through, my first really quiet year out here, not knowing people. In large part, this city was still on lockdown.
Yeah.
And so it was just a lot of personal growth. And I came out of the other side of it feeling this like noticeable like lightness
Mm,
and confidence that I hadn't felt the last few years that I was back home in Seattle.
yeah.
And I don't know, just that can lead you to be more open and accepting to new people and experiences. And I mean, frankly, it's kind of changed my life now. Like, I'm in a good spot.
That's phenomenal. Well, and I appreciate you sharing all of that because I definitely witnessed that, from the outside looking in, but it was such an incredible journey for me to watch it, and just the bravery that it took to move across the country and to really start a new life. And you're like, I'm gonna go for it. And then to see where you are now, like I think sometimes we don't recognize the risks that we're taking because we're like, this just feels right. We know we need to do it. But then to be
Mm,
on the other side of it and then to see where you've landed, it's like obviously I was going in the right direction. This is where I was meant to be. And I may have not understood it at the time, but it's all panned out the way it was supposed to. And what would you say like were some major points of growth, or some like key points where you're like, okay, this is an area where I need to grow, or this is something that I really need to reflect on or like learn about myself, that solitude was able to create an environment to be able to foster?
yeah. So at the time, so kind of like I was saying, that clarity of mind. And so I wouldn't say that I was always very good at maybe like paying attention to signs or like patterns. But that's something that, when I didn't have everybody else around me or outside noise, um,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, you have your friends around you and it's not meant to be like looked at as like a distraction, but inevitably
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that I was sort of out of that situation and sort of forced to stand on my own, and I was the only representative for me. It really did help me see some things a little bit more clearly. Areas that I lacked confidence in, I think I was able to approach it a different way.
Yeah.
um, I'd also say, kind of at that time, one of the patterns or lessons I recognized that was being put in front of me was about detachment.
Mm.
So this sounds kind of weird, but I mean, this is a spiritual podcast, so I'm sure people I won't be like, okay, what is this girl talking
It's
about?
open forum. Trust me, I know.
Every single person that I met when I very first moved here, and like I said, it was, just chance encounters because a large part of the city was on lockdown. I'm just meeting people in the building, going to my grocery store, just everyday things.
Yeah.
Every single person that I ended up, striking any type of substantial relationship, all in a row, Aquarius.
Mm,
I didn't know a single Aquarius person in
yeah.
my life
Oh
back
no,
home,
no.
which is so odd, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is weird. Like, I want to know what this means.
Like
So,
what's the value, like qualities of
yeah, what are
Aquarius?
these people about? And overwhelmingly, I it was a lesson in the ability to detach. And
Mm,
so I'm like, okay, well, check. I'm here where I know no one and left my entire past life behind, so to speak.
yeah.
But is that still really detaching? You can make a move or make a change, and sometimes people will do that to sort of escape a situation.
Yeah.
And that wasn't what I felt like I was doing, because really I was still kind of holding on and grasping to the things that I had left. And so it was almost like recognizing you took the chance and you made the big physical move. Maybe there's some things in your closet or things from your past that you haven't truly let go, that you need to allow yourself to not just physically but mentally move forward.
And emotion
um
too.
exactly, even more so. And so once I recognized that, I was like, okay, I kind of get it. And as hard as that might have been, I was able to do that. I could find closure where I needed to, even in situations that I was like, maybe I'm not even ready to touch it. Out of sight, out of mind. I'm over it. It's fine.
I'm good. I don't think about this.
In the weirdest chain of events, those people would randomly reach out to me. And I was like, I'm getting opportunity after opportunity to do this closure. Gotta man up, woman up, gotta do it.
Well, and to show
And
up fully, to be like, this is occurring for a reason. I recognize the pattern. I see this. I'm now asking for an invitation, like pretty much universe, come show me how. Let me do this. Like, let me grow. And it's like, all right, well, here it is. How
I
did
got
that
what I asked for.
asking you shall receive, but in like good and bad? What was probably the most difficult one, or if you don't mind sharing?
Ooh, gosh. Okay, well,
You
I
know the
know,
evidence
right?
we're gonna talk about. We're gonna go in deep. I know.
So as much as I have been married before. And so this divorce is years already down the road. Even before leaving Washington, leaving Seattle, we had Walt moved on. He has an entire family, a wife and children and everything. And, I had other substantial and long-term relationships. And
Mhm.
so as far as I was concerned, I didn't need closure. It had
Yeah,
already taken place.
close. The door was
Um,
yeah.
right. Um, but I'm also one of those kind of rare people that I've always still managed to be friends with or hold in high regard. Every ex I've ever had, and we're like, what? You're friends with your exes? Because I'm like, why not? Like, obviously, I thought they were great people, or
I
else we
would
would have
have been
never
with
been
them.
together.
Yeah, like I would have been with them, but I didn't think they were really cool.
Right. But there's still some level of that, which I only recognized again once I got the separation and sort of my own self discovery and
Yeah.
listening, that aspects of that are actually selfish. And
Mhm.
and some of that could be seen as selfish, it could be manipulative. I wasn't ever going out of my way to try to stay like involved in their lives or even reaching out or texting or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But knowing, the gravity of the history that we had, and even knowing to some degree that I was the one that, ended our situation, that there was some level of like feeling still that other person may have had for me.
Like you were the one that,
And
in a way.
sure, I mean, it could have been something like that, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna put words in anyone's mouth. But
He might say that if he was on the pod, he might mention that.
right.
I don't know.
If you wanted to be honest, no, I'm just kidding. But it's very possible.
How could he not?
And
Yeah.
to be able to release both of us from
Mm,
that, because I think that as long as you have a piece of your heart or, one foot anywhere else, then that is going to in some way be a hindrance to anything that you're trying to build moving forward. um so yeah, the hardest part, out of the blue, I got a call from him.
I don't
And
have a call from him.
yeah, and mind you, we're on a 3-hour time difference now, so I'm like, what in the actual F is this person calling me right now? um
I do remember.
and I think, and so it was again where I was like, normally I probably would have just ignored it. But I was like, something's telling me like this is the journey I'm on. Like I need to let all this old stuff go. So I answered,
Mm-hmm.
and it definitely unearthed where, like I said, where I thought there was closure. I had no lingering feelings. I'm like good to go. It just was like it was like I had to wear it, like I had to own it. Because he said a lot of things and sort of unleashed a bunch of stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I never had issue with. And I could tell at the end of it, he felt way better. Like he got everything off his chest. And then it like left me with all the baggage, like with a gaping wound. And I was like, I was not prepared for that. So then, yeah, I just sat again and sort of was forced to work through all that.
Mm-hmm.
Arguments I never even remembered that we had, that he obviously had been thinking about for decades past.
Decades later.
Um,
Wow.
Literally, yeah. So I was like, at first I was angry because I was like, I actually was fine and I didn't need closure. I was actually trying to be
That's my
nice,
shit up, bro. That's my shit up.
right? I was like, I was trying to do you a favor, and now you just left me in a bad way.
Now I'm
But no,
drowning in sorrow because of yes, but yes. But
I'm
also
truly thankful that it happened.
you didn't if there was if you were truly over it, then it probably wouldn't have caused such a commotion, right? Like so obviously
Very
there
true.
was still some little bit of unsettledness within you as well. The well,
Oh, completely.
yeah.
So that was a tough moment, for sure. Um, but again, it probably without it, it wouldn't be possible for me to be where I am and in the situation that I am now. And so I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah. Was there like what was maybe one key thing that you felt like you healed from after having that conversation?
Well, one, it just gave me perspective, because more or less just the whole situation itself, that I was going along all this time, think I pictured the whole relationship and the whole ending like completely different. He was apologizing to me for ways that he said that he treated me towards the end. Meanwhile, I had it in my mind that like I was the villain that broke up our marriage, and that,
Yeah.
and it was, and he saw it totally different. So that in of itself really made me remember that my lens is not the only lens, my experience is not the only experience. And for me personally, that's something I need to constantly be reminded of, because I know I'm guilty of thinking that I'm like completely surprised when someone's not on the same page with me. I'm like, how, like, it's so obvious, like, duh, like, how
How
can
could
you
you not?
not be thinking, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's not the case. Like, hello, Shannon. There's like a thousand other, well, millions, billions of other perspectives, and everybody's not thinking this, what I see as common sense thing. It's not that. So that was just a big eye opener altogether, and reminded me to be mindful of other people's interpretations of situations, and how I might be seeing it one way is not the absolute of, how it went down.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you've had an image of how you thought that transpired, and to hear such a different side, like just a totally different view on it, it's like, whoa, like, and then also to reevaluate, like, was that what happened, and how have I been looking at this, and then how does
Mm-hmm.
that change, like, how I view what occurred, and then how do I want to move forward? Like, there's so many things that come into play with all of that.
And it also showed me a pattern that that wasn't the only relationship to where, in like after the fact, I had this idea in my mind of like, oh, I left this person wounded, or like, like some type of power dynamic that wasn't entirely that, to where they were willing to take just as much ownership and responsibility to the ending of the relationship, whereas I was wearing the brunt of that on my shoulders.
Yeah.
Um, so that too, I mean, it was I I was a little bit absolved of some of, I was probably harnessing guilt that I didn't even acknowledge.
Yeah. And almost like yeah, the guilt, and maybe even feeling like you did something wrong, and to forgive yourself for that.
Mm.
Forgiveness is a very powerful tool, especially when it comes to the matters of the heart, right? To be able to really connect with others,
Yeah.
to be able to forgive others and forgive yourself in the past. So,
And when you do, it really is like you feel such a weight lifted off your shoulders.
mhm. Well, and it sounds like that might be a large part of why you felt the lightness that you did after kind of working through so many of these pieces. Because
Absolutely.
and like loves, great loves of our lives, they, I think, sometimes affect us more than we even acknowledge them to, and especially how we see others, and like how we show up for our relationships in general, friendships or partnerships. So, well,
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing. Sorry, I know
Of
we were supposed to
course. Yeah, no, I mean, because who else am I going to talk to this about besides my girl?
she's like, just so you know, I was in the trenches for a while.
Between that and finding a therapist, right?
Don't we all? Don't we all? But I, so then we've kind of touched a little bit on like the solitude and the part that that had to play in you gaining a deeper understanding of yourself. But then also
Mhm.
discussed a little bit of like the relationships and how that's helped shape who you are. Is there other relationships that you feel like you've taken like nuggets of wisdom that have helped be like you become the person that you are, even other friendships that you feel like have molded you in some way?
So this is what I was thinking about, just sort of in preparation for this, and just like you sort of touched on, our history and everything.
Yeah.
And I feel so utterly grateful, and I honestly in awe sometimes when I think about that I have friendships and people in my life that have truly known me my entire life.
Yeah.
In terms of self-discovery, I feel like having those people who have actually like seen the whole journey
Mm,
and actually witnessed your growth is invaluable.
yeah.
Um, it's like it's those people that keep me accountable. They keep you true to yourself. Um, and we kind of talked about this too, that the intentions behind some of the things we do or say. And it's those people that know your intentions, whereas others, or, new people that you bring into your life may not. And hell, if you need somebody that's going to gas you up a little bit, if you're doubting yourself, or conversely, if you're, doing a little bit too much, you need somebody to keep it real with you.
Like
Like those are the really pivotal moments where having these close bonded friendships can help shape, decisions that you make in your journey that can have a lasting impact in your entire life. And I think relationships are the same in that way, But I also think there's sort of a clear, like, added benefit to an intimate relationship in that same way, where how it impacts your self-discovery. Um, and I know it's not true for everyone, but ideally that we actually learn from each relationship and learn from each breakup. Now, kind of, what I touched on, some of the things I learned following that breakup. And I feel like, once you have that, each time that you go through it and you come on the other side of it, you should be like taking a lesson, something about yourself from
Absolutely.
that. You learn about being in those kind of relationships, teaches you what you want and don't want out of life.
100%.
It teaches you boundaries. I
Mhm.
mean, I feel like it teaches you courage. There's so many things that you can gather on the other side of a relationship about who you are and who you want to be moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, and for me personally, then, since you asked, some of the specific lessons that I learned is that I don't think I've necessarily been a person that's ever really lacked courage necessarily. But
I
so for
literally
me,
agree.
right? Yeah. Everybody would describe me as, bold or however you want to say it. But I think what I ended up learning is how to do that and provide that message, but do so in a way that is still more tactful or empathetic, really. Being able to approach those hard subjects and do so from a more caring and diplomatic place.
Mm.
I think between that and just, becoming a more patient person, that those are going to be my lifelong lessons to continue improving on.
Yeah. Well, and not to just go into astrology, but those are like the life lessons of every, I think, Aries is that patience and to like not just jump into something, but to like really think it through. And then also, the tactfulness, but it's because you are so honest and like don't have any reservation to be like, well, why wouldn't I say this? If I feel this so strongly, then why wouldn't I say this out loud? Because there is this there a confidence that goes along with that. But those are things that I admire the most about you, but then can also see there's a balance, right? It's like the healthy dose of
Mm-hmm.
moderation, but recognizing the tact that goes along with it to be like, okay, I'll be a little more diplomatic about how I approach this, and then that way, at least, like I always say I'm really direct, but I have a smile on my face, so maybe that.
Right. Right. And
uh,
what would you say, like, I mean, obviously, you are on your own journey, we all are, but specifically where, you're rediscovering yourself with more solitude and aside from a relationship, what do you feel like are some things that you've learned as a result of that ending, like what you've learned about yourself?
like through the ending of a relationship, what have I learned about myself throughout that process?
Mm-hmm.
I think one is that I've always looked to others for like I'm a leader in some ways and in some situations, but then I have also looked for a boldness or even kind of like a courage or even like a power, a more like dominant perspective in others. And I've like and like almost like a strength. Like I've looked to others to exemplify that versus looking within myself. And
Oof.
um that is just like, if someone's gonna shoot it to a straight or someone's gonna like talk some shit, it like sometimes it's me. It depends on setting and place, but more often than not, like
I've seen it.
I know it's like depends on who I probably say time and place. So like, and it's also who I'm around. Is someone else going to be able to do that? Or that's like, I feel like a part of my personality is like, what group am I around? Is someone else going to be able to do this? Or do I need to be the person that steps in to do it? And I tend to have people around me that do take that role, especially within my last relationship. I would say he was very much more direct and like, if someone's going to talk some shit, it's definitely going to be him. And he's actually way better at it than I am because he's far wittier than I was ever. And so like you might even flow into a fucking rap and just start talking. That's how you know.
Right now it's a diss track
Drop a
on the
track
spot.
like a burn track. Anyway, so that's actually when I knew we needed to leave. I was at like a party. Like And I'd be like hear him rapping somewhere and I'd be like, oh God,
Oh.
what's he saying? And I was like, no one's listening to the words, but he's talking shit to everyone. And I'm like, again, impressive
Bars.
all around. Bars,
Yes,
bars,
got
bars,
bars.
bars. But at the same I can't believe I just shared that, but that is so true. That was such a huge part of our relationship for so long. But I would say in that way, I kind of just leaned on him to be like the bulldog, and then I was the nice.
Mhm.
And that didn't require for me to ever really stand up for myself because I didn't have to. I was the peacekeeper, which is also a role that I feel more comfortable in. And so when I left that situation, and also when I got more into real estate and like was negotiating contracts and like having to like advocate for my clients, like it wasn't always about peacekeeping. Sometimes you had to push back in order to like execute what needed to be done and also to advocate for my clients. So like I recognize that I am just as powerful. I have just as much strength. I have just as much confidence. And in those moments, I can be just as direct with tact if I need to be. And also then I recognize that if I were to get aggressive, I get very aggressive. Like it's like either like
Oh,
it's either super nice Farah or like I'm about to bite your head off Farah. And I recognize there can be a middle ground for that. And I recognize with building new relationships and friendships and everything, and also business relationships, especially, I think is probably where I learned it the most. But to find that balance of both sides and recognizing, especially as a woman, that I can be assertive
right.
and that I can also convey what I need and what I want without just always like necessarily giving in to what the other person wants, which
I completely get that. I mean, like you hadn't had the opportunity before to really harness that power that you're saying of like when to, turn up that other gear if you needed to. And so, like you said, it would go from extreme to extreme.
yeah,
Um, but now it kind of perfectly set you up, like you said, for where you are now to be able to have those hard conversations. Um, but doing it with some balance and not just flying completely off your shit.
yeah, which I think then that's and towards the end where things got a lot more hostile, if you will. um it was just instant, then it was just
Hmm.
like 0 to 100 real quick. And I was like, back the fuck up, let's go, and like, I don't like to be in that state all the time. And I also don't want to be in relationships that force me to be in that state all the time. And so I think
Oh, of
now
course.
being able to stand up for myself within reason, but then also to be able to like, I'm, as I just was telling you about, I'm really leaning into being more soft, recognizing the power and the strength with the feminine side of me, and recognizing to be compassionate, to be kind, and to know when to be firm and to be assertive. It's all this delicate dance, and like finding that like
Yes.
kind of flow for myself has been really eye-opening and just something I don't think I ever really had a firm grasp on before.
Gosh, I could not agree more. 'Cause like I said, I can be honest, and I always knew because as long as my interest in psychology, and then once I got into professions where I was able to provide counseling, I knew overwhelmingly that especially for the role I was in, that I lacked empathy. And I'm like, how can you be a therapist or a counselor with someone and have that be, a missing part of your personality? And truthfully, because it came down to me. No, but what were you saying?
You are really direct though. You will shoot it. You don't, it's like straight through to like, but not in like
Right,
intention wise, you're not trying to hurt them, but it's just very like, it's just like a very matter of fact presentation, I guess. Yeah.
right. In the name of coming to a clearer understanding, and in the name of efficiency, as far as I can tell it. And I genuinely used to look at being empathy as like a weakness, kind of like a negative thing. And I was saying, that was a lesson that I developed, as a result of my friendships and as a result of ending, long-term relationships. And I don't at all see it like that anymore. I mean, some of that's maturity, but I honestly think it's just a better way to connect with someone. It's a better starting point.
Mhm.
Yes, I can very much still get my point across and be direct. It's almost just like a more evolved human. It takes me, because my nature is to just blurt it out exactly how I thought it. It now requires a little bit, like you said, a delicate dance. It involves me taking whatever I was thinking or saying, gurgling it out up in my brain, put just a slight filter on it for a moment so that I can more appropriately connect that. Because if you're talking to someone, granted it's being direct, and granted you're like, I mean, now there can be no misunderstanding because I said it just how I was thinking it. But if you're coming at someone like at 100 miles an hour or super harsh and critically, even if they quote unquote understood what you said, how receptive to it are they actually going to be?
Yeah, because they might feel attacked. I think then they immediately jump to the defense, and then it's like then it just like falters because you're like, shit, now we're not even, the point's lost because this person's now
Exactly.
defensive and it's now like trying to like justify what they're doing. And it's like we don't need to go down that road. Like I'm just trying to tell you what I think. But I think to hear you say that and to describe that, I think is something that I think is like an extreme for most people that they never really fully are able to like incorporate, and then to add that filter of kindness, to a certain
Mhm.
extent, or they're just so nice that they actually never say what they want and they never get what they want, and then they're resentful because of it. And then you're on like the other side of the pendulum where then people are always just saying what they want and are being really direct, but then people are like resentful towards them because they feel like they're getting taken advantage of. And it's like I think it really leans into the feminine nature, like the balance of the masculine and feminine too.
Oh yeah, no, that's another good point of it. I mean, as long as I've known you, and I would say it's true about myself, that we are fairly, like, that as females we are a little bit more dominant and come from a place that is like a little bit more masculine presenting in terms of, like I said, the way we might speak our mind,
Mhm.
or just the level of courage that we might show in certain situations where other people might be a lot more timid.
Mm.
And so being able to, yes, be yourself, yes, be as feminine as you want to, and also still be able to handle your business,
Yeah.
but like doing that in a place that's true to you, but will actually resonate with the people you're trying to communicate it to.
Yeah. And I think that's how you actually make change. That's how you find progress in anything. Like if you're trying to get everyone on board towards a common goal, like everyone needs to buy in. Like it can't be led by fear or by like everyone just needs to listen and do what I say. It's like, and sometimes there's time and place for authority, but like to be able to get everyone like um on, yeah, I was gonna say on board again, but like to get everyone like excited about it and the like motivate.
Mm.
I think motivation to find the like, and especially within your sports psychology, like finding the
I was
motivation.
just gonna say you're keying me up.
Right? And I was like, boom, keep going. Because I was like, more about this, but then that's how like, because otherwise intrinsic, value and reward is so much more powerful than anything from the exterior.
Yeah, you make me think of like the great coaching examples when you're saying that, looking at the difference between like a Pete Carroll style of coaching, which is very much like, what you were just describing, someone that can really rally a team because he goes out of his way to specifically like tap into each person's strengths and abilities and communication styles, and to be able to manage, that many individuals but rally them to a common goal is astounding. Like that takes real people skills. And then, there's the old school way of doing it where it is very much authoritarian. And so my soft girl era or journey was, sort of figuring out the balance to that. um, and I'm actually just thankful that, kind of like you said, I don't really need to always lead with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it does me better. It does good for, everyone that I'm communicating with or working with. where we can sort of just start at a better base level than like all of this. It's this more like intense or aggression or however they might see it. People see it differently, but not having to bulldog, so to speak, people.
Yeah. Well, and it can be effective, and that is why it is utilized, because like it will get the job done, but then are you going to do so in a manner that's sustainable, and I think that that's that part. And especially when you think about relationships or friendships, yeah, you could force all of your friends to do what you want them to do, or a partner to be like, you're going to do this and this is why you're going to do it, control them, like essentially just control everyone. But it's like, who really want, like, some people like to be controlled. What was it, BDSM or
And even that, right? There's like a time and place.
time and
Let's
place, and
be honest.
there are safe words. It's like, so I think even in those settings, like maybe, but I think that ultimately we all want to feel like we have a say. We all want to feel like we're having a part to play in it. And we want to feel like we're making a contribution. And if someone's constantly always taking the reins, like, and never giving permission for anyone else to do so, like, I think over time that gets exhausting. And I don't think there's really that equal exchange from both sides within it in any way. So, but that's also like, I think finding a true partnership, and that's like being a teammate or being a partner. Everyone's contributing, everyone's involved, everyone feels like what they're doing is important, and that's going to make them
Mhm.
perform better, in whatever setting that might be.
Yeah, what we're talking about is sort of learning how to be more diplomatic,
Mhm.
the diplomacy of the situation, and that balance,
Yeah.
certainly.
I know we deterred. We were literally in complete left field, but I
No, I don't feel like we did it all. That was, all coming from the lessons learned from the relationships and, what we discovered about ourselves as a result of that. So I still feel like we're completely on track. I mean, I guess where we were going to transition after that was sort of how friendship is represented in our lives now, or maybe what the evolution of that has looked like.
Mhm.
Do you want to go on that first?
Yeah, you go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. So I guess for me now, and now that I still am in, to me, it still feels like a new environment. Plus, Seattle will always be my home. But I have met some incredible people out here, luckily, and I'm starting to get a grasp of my environment and, the places that feel like me, the places that I vibe well in, and, going to those kind of places where I meet more people that are interesting and exciting humans. But I would say probably the biggest way that friendship is represented in my life now, and how I honor it is by being a reliable friend.
Mm,
That's kind of first and foremost the most important thing to me.
yeah.
Um, I think you kind of said it early on when you were giving my introduction that you saw me as someone that, whenever I said I was going to do something, that I always did. And I took that very seriously. Like, for accountability reasons and everything, like if I announce out loud, a goal I had or whatever it might be, like, oh, you better bet all hell that I was going to get it done, just because I couldn't even stand, like, doubters or people being like, oh, I thought you said you're going to do this. So for even off that reason alone, I'd be like, oh no, I ran my mouth about this, it's happening.
Yeah.
And so to that same extent, I apply that to my friendships, like
Mm,
just to always show up for them. If I say I'm going to do something, if they need me for anything, like I'm always going to make sure that I can be there. I want to be a reliable person
yeah.
to the people that I love, and I always hope and expect that same in return. But I think that that's crucial to what I look for now in friendships,
Mm,
and what I really value.
absolutely. Well, and I think there's someone that you can trust, like being reliable, being
Mm.
consistent, and doing what you say you're going to do is like how trust is developed and built on over time. And if you don't have that, then it's really hard to like really foster a strong relationship without it. Like, where's the foundation, you know? Because what are you
Hmm.
really going to expect from that person? So I can definitely see that. That's important. And you are
And there
very,
was an evolution to that, because I mean, I could probably admit, back in the day, we could have been friends with people, and that was maybe solely just due to proximity. So and so is in my class, or so
yeah,
and so lives in my neighborhood, or, whatever it is. And it was like kind of sad and eye-opening, like looking back, like where we grew up. Like, I can admit I grew up calling people friends that most assuredly were racist, or like,
that's
people that could have cared less about me. And it was, either because it was established as like those were the cool people, or, whatever it was, some type of insecurity or validation that I craved, to where I allowed that to go on.
mhm,
But yeah, not anymore. There's, a huge amount of growth, and that comes with, learning more about yourself, to where hopefully in adulthood you can really foster more fruitful friendships.
mhm.
That doesn't have to mean that you have like the biggest friend group that you had like when you were in high school. Like, as adults, I mean, you see that even less often.
For sure.
Um, and like I have a very, very tiny, tiny, tight circle. Like, I'm like I said, I still value my solitude, like almost on equal footing as I do with my friendships. So now it's like, if you are one of my friends, if you are someone that I choose to still have in my life, that that requires effort, because we all have our own things going on. People have families, they have kids, husbands, this, that, and the other, their careers that they're maintaining. So in adulthood, it actually requires some effort, to maintain friendships.
Mhm.
And so, finding people that have a mutual like respect and understanding, and just where feels like the effort involved in maintaining that relationship is equal. Those are the people that I can say I call my friends.
1000%. And so much of that, like you said, like as we get older, friendships are just harder to maintain because we have so many other things pulling at our attention. But then I
Mhm.
think very much so, and I would say I've always felt this from you, and is also why I think our friendship has maintained the way it has, and always been a safe container for both of us, is because we've both also always recognized the value within one another. And like I have always valued you as a good friend, and I've always trusted you and always knew that you were there and you had my back. And I hope that you have always felt the same from me too. And that's a rare thing,
A
you know.
1000%, my girl for life.
I know. And that's, but then like recognizing like you don't always have that. And like you said, like having other friendships where you recognize the values were not the same. And like, and just having to be like, I know for myself, having to be really honest about those types of friendships
Mhm.
and cutting them off, or at least removing myself from them in a certain way. And then I recognize that like over time, the ability for me to show up more fully for that core group, because I wasn't getting pulled in so many different directions, to not have as wide of a group so that the people that do matter to me know how much they matter, is really important to me now. And it's something I think even within the last couple of years, I've skimmed back a lot to be able to be like, who do I actually like being around? Who fills me up? Who do I get just as much energy and love from that I give to someone else? Like, I think that that's something I don't know if I really thought about before, you know, and now it's like the only thing that matters.
And that is huge for you, Fair, because as long as I've known you, you've always been a very social person. And like you said, like you would give your energy and intention to, anyone that's a good time. And not to say like, when you're younger, that's fine. Like that's what you need. But now when you really do have, time is like a premium,
Yeah.
then yeah,
Limited
really
resource.
sort of taking the time to look at those relationships more closely. And like you said, what fills you up? Who are people that teach you things about yourself and about the life in general? And that's what's important to me. in terms of like the relationships I'm going out of my way to maintain now.
Yeah. Well, and who do I see in my life long term, right? Who are the people that
Mhm.
are going to be those lifelong friendships that, we have a shared perspective. And like it was like one of the funniest things. I feel like I hadn't seen you in a couple of years because so Shannon's in Baltimore. So I was like, I randomly went to Baltimore at the end of a trip to Miami when you first moved there. Like 2 years ago, literally went for an overnight trip. You were like, come visit me. I was like, okay. And so like, and I did. I was like, I'm on the East Coast. I might as well. The East Coast is all the same, right? Like, I'll just go check
Right? Yeah, I might as well just pop here and here
this
and
one, a
there.
little north of here. But to just, I think to spend, some additional time and like just more a longer length of time with you, the fact that we were just like, it like, we never skipped a beat. And I find that so like it just filled up my cup on so many different levels. And also to remind me that I am not, like I think to be liked by everyone is great, but like to be liked for who you are by the people that are your people is like something that you can never replace.
The
And
people that know, yeah, oh my gosh, it is so fulfilling. I completely agree with you. And it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, the value in terms of self-discovery though, because having those people that have been there the whole way, like they actually know who you are, even when you start to forget or fade or doubt yourself or whatever it might be. Having you around, having those close people that are able to sort of hold up a mirror when you might need it. It's, yeah, you can't live without that.
and that are holding up a mirror from a place of love, like I want you to see this because I want the best for you. And like that genuine intent of like, I want the best for you. I want you to be happy. I want you to be good. And I'm willing to like have the hard conversations with you in order for you to be there. Cause there's people that can just be around that'll tell you whatever. But like when you have the people around that are willing to say the truths and say it to your face, I think
Mm.
is one of the most important pieces in life, because a lot of people can say a lot of things behind your back but never say it to your face. And I value that because I value honesty. Honesty is like one of those core things that like, and that's why I was like, you might be really honest. I was like, but she's honest.
Yeah, you had my back against Jason.
Boyfriend, you guys have been together for a while. And I was like, she's just keeping it real. I was like, she's not wrong. She's not wrong. You start.
He probably was like, oh no, now this girl's really gonna be on one. And I was like, so thankful for you, Farrah. I always will be.
Ever and always. So I think it's important to be able to have those people around you to be able to like to shine the light to and that are genuinely happy when you're succeeding too and when you're happy. I remember there was this one person, a friend of ours was like, an older friend of ours was like, people are happy for you until you're more successful. They're happy for your success
Mm-hmm.
until you're more successful than them, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, and it was like when you start to see the people that like as long as you didn't exceed them, like they were good, and like when that little shift happens, it's interesting to see how people change. And I would say that anybody that's ever given me a glimpse of that at this point, I've just removed. Like I was just been up,
Cut.
like cut from the squad, get cut. And I cut people these last couple of years, and and not from a malicious point, but really because I was like, I only have so much time and energy, and like I really want my core group to be my core group, and that is, and like if new people are entering, they're entering because they are aligned with who I am now, not who I once was, and that's a
Mm.
really hard conversation and truths to find, because you can be friends with people for years and if it's just not in alignment anymore, it's not in alignment anymore, and to be okay with that, no hard feelings, but to be honest with myself about
Yeah,
putting time and energy into. So
that's a part of that continued growth journey as well.
yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I mean, because one of the things I gain the most joy from is for looking back and discovering or better understanding the reason that someone was brought into your life, whether that be friend, whether that be relationship. and maybe they're not around anymore, maybe they still are. But again, just once you get to sit back and you're like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense now. And it is only meant to better you and put you in a better situation moving forward. And you can only hope that your impact in their life at that time did the same in some regard. And that's what life's all about.
And that element of surrender, right? And letting go and just recognizing it's all going to pan out the way that it's supposed to. And that ultimately you're not in control. I'm not in control. So, like, I can do as much as I want to, but I can't change the way they see me. I see them, like how we engage. Like, all I can do is like control my actions and how I'm showing up. And if it's authentically, what more can I do? Right.
Amen, sister.
I know. What qualities would you say like are important to you within friendship? Like what really stands out for you?
Oh yeah, like I said, 100% the reliability piece and feeling we that we're coming from like a place of equal footing in terms of like I reach out to you just as often as you reach out to me. I can set up plans just as often as you can set up plans. Like that it's really reciprocal and not feeling like, like I'm sure we've all had like the friends or certain relationships that are so one-sided. They'll like hit you up like, girl, what do you want to do this weekend? Like, well, what do you got going on? Like, I mean, I love to plan things. I really do. I'm like always gonna be the person if someone says what restaurant are you going to, I'm gonna look it up, like cool. But it's
Yeah.
like why do I exclusively have to always be the person, reaching out or making the plans or coming to you or whatever it is, just some level of like
Mhm.
um equal energy being put toward and that reciprocity and
Yeah.
just a shared core sense of beliefs and that they are also contributing to my life in a positive way and I'm trying to do the same for them.
Yeah. 1000%. Because that's what, that's how we continue to evolve is by having the people that are positively influencing us and helping us, continue to grow and be a better person, right? And like that's all we
Yeah.
ask for. And that's I think a large part why people are in your life for certain periods of time is to be that voice of reason or even that spark of excitement or whatever role they might end up falling into. And it's like I think everyone is there for time and place, and sometimes it sounds corny and cheesy, but like they're there for a season and then sometimes people are there for a lifetime, and I think that they're all important. It just depends on what it is. So
And accepting that, because sometimes that can be hard. Like sometimes you think, especially I think when it comes to friendships, and I don't, there's probably something to this. It probably completely differs between male friendships and female friendships. That sometimes, like, I met some really great girlfriends since I moved to the East Coast,
mhm.
and we'd go out, or even when we didn't go out, and we could chat, have heart to hearts over a glass of wine, like, and I was like, these are really great people. Like I can see like how we got to a same point in our life that like brought us here,
Mhm.
but then it sort of fizzles out for one reason or another. Like I said, if I'm always reaching out and I'm not getting that same back from you, and you pop up 2 months later and you're like, hey girl, what's going on? I'm like I get we all have things going on in our lives, but I just mean the effort to
Yeah,
be
you're like
equal,
just
especially when you're like you're
yeah.
getting to know someone too to a certain extent. So, kind of setting best practices. And so yeah, they're not necessarily brought to your life to be lifelong friendships, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't valuable, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't beneficial in some way for the time that they were in your life.
Yeah, that I completely agree with that. And like the acceptance of all of that, and also just the enjoyment of whatever it is. Like you can also like some of my you also know I'm kind of crazy, but like some of the favorite people I've ever met, like I've met them randomly out one night, and then we have like because I've done more solo trips, and like I'll randomly see them and meet them. I spend like a whole night hanging out with them, and then I'm like I'll never see you again, but I had so much fun with you and I'm so happy
Right.
this one night. And like actually this one girl that I know, I still stay in touch with her, funny enough. I met her in Miami when I was down there and we ended up meeting at a drag show. And she's like, I've never gone out in Miami with some family. I've never like gone out. And like this is my first time and I like randomly I felt like my intuition just guided me to come out tonight and then I like meet you and then we end up going out all night and like partying and dancing together. Had an absolute fucking blast and she was so nice. She was so cool. She ended up dropping me off at the hotel at the end of the night and I was like, bye, see you later. Like we gotta stay in touch. But like, will I ever see her? Probably not. I don't think I'll ever see her in person again. I don't know why I would. But do I care about? Do I?
Doesn't even matter. It was
Doesn't matter.
so y'all had a time last night. Like that was so memorable. And it was like you guys were both like right place, right time to be able to experience that moment.
And well, and now even like now that you've moved across the country, like how do you like? I think a lot of people bring this up to me. They're like, how do you make adult friends? Like, how do people make new friends as adults? And I'm just
Oh
curious
my
here.
gosh, this is a great topic. Like this could all be a topic of an entire podcast all by itself. How can adults make friends? Like we need to do
5 tips
a
on
weekly
making friends as
catalog.
an adult.
No, I that's the thing is I didn't have the tips. That's why it's like a great topic because it truly is really can be super difficult. I so the first really cool girl that I met out here again so you have to like somewhat be brave. You have to put yourself out there. It does involve that. That's step one, I will say.
Mhm.
And luckily in my case, nothing will ever keep me from watching my Seahawks games. That means even if I'm
Eyes on
solo,
the prize.
even exactly, I could be solo, I could not know anyone, I could be in the opposing city of the team we're playing, doesn't matter. If I need to see my game, I will be out there in all my swag. And so that's how I met her. I went out to some dive bar that I read would be willing to show the Seahawks game. And I showed up there and I was just having a good old time watching my team, doing my regular yelling at the TV that I do, same as when I'm home. And this girl came over and was like, you just look like you're having the best time and have the biggest smile on your face. I had to come talk to you. And the rest was history. She's super cool. Like I've gone out a ton of places with her. She's introduced me to, other groups of friends. I was able to get out in the community and do more like volunteer things that I wanted to do, like, planting trees in the park, like all this stuff that I feel like I would have otherwise never even come across if I wasn't willing to just put myself out there, do something I love to do. And I was fortunate enough to meet people. And that's, I'd say overwhelmingly, like people are like, oh my God, it's so hard what I do. You just have to show up. You just have to do it. It's uncomfortable, but hey, if you're meant to find the person or they're meant to find you, it will happen, but they're not gonna find you sitting in your house.
Well, and I think so much a part of that too is like being authentic. The fact that because I've watched Shannon watch football games since I was in high school. I remember waking up at your house in like high school. This is like we went out on a Saturday night in the 10 a.m. game and she's like yelling at the TV and I was like, wasn't that
That's
half
12 for life.
back? I know. Anyways, but I think that there was but to see you in your element, like that's when you're like there's no filters, this is all like I love it and like so much about football, this hands down knows more about football than most men or women that I know. And for you to be able to see that and then that's what she vibed with. She was like you're having so much fun, you're like no you're shit, you're over here and like those are the people that you're going to sync up with, but it's by you being yourself that you're able to even for them to see you. They can't see you if you're not allowing yourself to be seen.
That is a really good point too. So for people wanting to make friends as an adult, yes, it is hard. People are super awkward. Thank you, social media, for making us even weirder. But but you gotta still just do you. You can't, I've always been huge on if there's like an event I want to do or somewhere I want to go, I was never gonna let, not having someone there to accompany me
Mm.
keep me from doing that thing. And those are moments where I've actually run into really cool people.
That is, I think, one of the harder things. I know a lot of people that will not do things by themselves. Like they've never gone out to lunch by themselves. They've never gone to do anything. And I'm like, and I wasn't necessarily one to necessarily hop on the bandwagon of that always, but like I think now more than ever, I'll do anything by myself now. Like like anything. Like I'm like, I don't even think twice about it. If I want to do something and no one wants to go, I'm like, well, I guess I'm going by myself. And
Yeah.
that's how you like sometimes you are in this more vulnerable, receptive state because you're not with a group. You're not like trying, like you're not talking to anyone else, and you're like, oh yeah, like you like this thing, we're both here, like we have a good conversation. Oh, I guess like did I just make a new friend? Maybe so. And
Yeah.
it's really fun, but I think there's a vulnerability that comes along with that that you just have to be willing to like endure for a little bit.
So true. Because if you think about it, what you described, that's not so different than how we made friends when we were little kids. It's just back then we didn't have this built up like sense of pride or like ego. And so now it's just sort of remembering or regressing to some degree back to that level of where you're able to be vulnerable and it's okay. Like, what's really the worst that's going to happen if you go out and do something that you already wanted to do, something that you love by yourself? What the worst that can happen? Like, do you expect all eyes are all of a sudden going to be on you and everyone's pointing like, oh my God, that girl's alone? Like, what? Like, it's okay.
You're like, you're gonna be fine. I will lie. One time, the only time I was scared about that was I went to a comedy show. I went to the Comedy Cellar in New York City, which they're known for calling people out and
Oh
making
yeah, no.
comments. Like that is actually what they like do. And
Okay, that's true.
if I
That's a good example, folks. Comedy shows are dicey territory, alone or in a group. Just
or
beware.
they like
Yeah.
but so that was the only time I was like, oh shit, they're gonna call me out. Like what I'm sitting here by myself. But that was
Actually, my sister has a terrible story with that. It sounded like so traumatic. I was so glad I wasn't there. It was like my whole family, it was like my mom's husband and my sister like went to some comedy show and I was like, when did this happen and why I wasn't invited? But okay. Uh, but yeah, I guess they like totally did point them out and just like started going in on my sister and it turned into like a whole family drama thing. So yeah, comedy clubs is probably one place that I don't do.
skip the comedy show or sit in the way back where they can't see you.
Right. And then that spotlight still comes on. But we
She's
can
the
do it. Put
loser.
yourself out there.
Well, I saw this a couple days ago and it was like a meme and it was like, it's not embarrassing unless you're embarrassed. So like anything could be like, if you want to be embarrassed about anything, you can be embarrassed about it, but like you choose kind of how you want to respond and like, and how you want to
I
remember.
love that.
Like I went to I went to the drag show, but I also was like, I'm gonna be surrounded by gay men. It's gonna be awesome. Like this could like how could this go wrong? This will be amazing. Or also
How can this go wrong?
I
Famous
was
last
like,
words.
like around LGBTQ like plus like friendly people. So I was like, oh, this will be nice because then I feel like I'm like in good company kind of thing. And then
Mhm.
but I did that whole solo trip. And then also I did that solo trip and I ended up going out to dinner by myself that night and then ended up meeting a couple of a couple of guy friends that evening. Sorry, like, I
Mm.
don't know why I felt the need to say it that way. But and I'm still
I
friends with
do.
them too. I like still talk to both of them and they we ended up going out and hanging out all night and just like had a really good time. And they were like really solid, nice people. And so like I think sometimes the way that I've at least made new friends, the most likely way for me to make new friends, other than like through a mutual friend, has been like me going out by myself, doing something that I enjoy and just being open to talk to people and to be really myself. Like I remember there was a time where it was like that whole year after the separation and I was like, I'm going to say whatever comes to mind and I'm not going to put it through a filter because like as you're like
See?
I had to add a filter, I had to remove the filter because I was so used to saying things in a way that was so diplomatic and so PC that I like wasn't really ever speaking my full truth. And so like I had to remove
Mm.
the filter in order for me to like even for me to be able to relate to people on a more genuine level. And so that whole year I was like, I'm just gonna say whatever the fuck comes to mind. And if I could be embarrassed about this, or I could feel shame about this, or I could think that they're gonna think I'm weird or not like me because of it, like I'm gonna say it anyways. If they don't like me, then fuck it. I guess they don't like me. And then that was the year where I made like a ton of new friends that
I
like
was gonna say, how'd that work out for you? No.
I was like, because then I have met people that were more my people. I think I recognized the part that growing up in a higher socioeconomic status majority white high school affected how I presented myself, and also like working for the University of Washington and working in a more prestigious position, like how I felt like I needed to speak a certain way and present myself a certain way, and like that I was like really numbing a part of me, or like kind of like pushing that,
Dumbing it down for sure.
toning it down, because then I felt like, well, if I'm like say things, if I say gonna, or I say something a certain way, people are gonna look at down upon me, is really what I had to like face that I was going through. And I shifted, I had to like, it was like such a, like a reality check. And then when I switched it back on to like be able to recognize how like beneficial that was for my life and for myself to be myself fully, then I was able to get friends that were more who I am, like, and like all parts of who I am. And it's been really beautiful. I've been really grateful for the relationships that's blossomed because of that. And they might be wild hood rats
Yeah.
sometimes, but I love them
Well,
nonetheless.
hey, aren't we all a little bit? No. Okay, I won't say we all, but present company included for sure.
Just that picture of us dancing, but you know what? Yes, it is. And yes, we are. But I think that, yeah, that's been a huge part, at least of my journey recently, when it comes to making new friends, allowing myself to not be this like buttoned up perfect version of who I think I need to be in order to be accepted and liked. And I'm just
You're not going to get genuine relationships of any kind if you're not being genuine. So,
truth bomb, mic drop, padow. All right. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I've thoroughly,
oh my gosh, I loved it.
as always, well, anytime we chat, I feel like we always get these like 2 to 3 hour conversations about life and going on.
We had Jason just like up in the clouds. He was like lost. It was like double dutch, is what he said. He was like, I would like try to jump in sometimes, but then I'd be like, oh no, now they're talking about something else. And I don't even know what that means. So I'm just back here. I was like, oh, babe. But I love it. I'd love to double dutch with you
Like,
anytime.
when we both like, if ADD is real, it's like we're gonna jump to another topic and then we're gonna go, and then we're gonna keep running down that road. We don't even know. He's like, I
Yeah.
have something to say, but they're not even actually talking about that topic anymore. But I know, and it was so good to meet him, and it's so beautiful to see where you are within your life at this point, because of the risk that you took, for you showing up fully, for you being 100% yourself, and to find such a genuinely kind and loving man has been like, just made my heart explode. And so I'm really
Aww,
grateful, and to meet him too, and for him to
thank
be so
you.
cool. And I feel like I got along with him really well from the jump, and I was like, I am happy and grateful that this is like who you have in your corner on that side of the world. So yeah.
He is. He really is the bestest. He's great. And he's also been a huge help in terms of, telling me the cool spots, getting me out. He's like pushing me constantly to go out and make more friends. And I'm like, I'm not as like social butterfly as you, hun, but yes, at least he's showing me, pointing me in the right direction. So I
Well,
appreciate it.
build those relationships together and apart. I think it's important to have friends that are just your friends, that have girl time. And so
Oh yeah.
like I would say is crucial for my like happiness. Almost like it's essential for my happiness, but at the same time, having a couple friends and like things that people that you guys can go up together is like kind of a fun part of being in a relationship too.
Oh, big time. Getting all cute with your mans.
Couples dinners. Okay. Well, thank you again. And where can people find you if they wanted to connect with you?
Really don't. But no, I'm just... But
You have
no, hopefully we'll get
straws
to
and
do
wishbone.
right. I'm gonna need to run that through a filter first. No. But really, hopefully we get to do more pods. Thinking about firing up a pod of my own, of course, with my more sports focused topics out here for the people.
God, will you? It
Still
would
doing my fantasy football consulting work.
I'm telling you, but or Twitter, follow on Twitter. You can find her on
And
Twitter.
kicking ass.
In being so fucking hilarious. I love it. And again, I'm telling you, more sports knowledge in that woman's head than anybody else. That if you want if you want
Yeah.
fantasy advice, please reach out. That
A
is a
trivia night ringer. That's if you want to connect with me, you can find me at your local Baltimore trivia nights. Any Black run events, I am there, and I really mean that. Like all of them. So yeah, shout me out if you're in B more, if you want restaurant suggestions, event suggestions. Yeah, I'm your girl.
totally had such a wonderful time when I was there. So thanks again for having me and hosting me while I was in Baltimore. Can't wait to come back. And yeah, if you want to check her out, find her on Twitter, Shannon Harris. What's your tag? What's your
S. Dot Harris.
S. Harris? You know,
The
I'm
same old, yeah.
S. Harris, yes. And thank you. And if oh yeah, I was like myself. Thank you for listening to the pod. So I was just like, all right, see you guys later. Bye, Shannon. I know. Peace out. But yeah, if you have any questions or thoughts on friendship and what that means to you, and maybe even someone that's really made an impact on you and that's changed the course of your life because of their friendship, or even something, a lesson you've learned throughout your life that you feel like is really valuable and that you also want to share, reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at Ferracino, or even on my website, coachingwithfarrah.com. Would love to have the conversation and just to keep the spirit of this alive, and to be able to continue to keep our minds thinking about these things and what it means to you and how it's played a part in your own self-discovery process is just invaluable. And I think is sometimes we underestimate the importance that the important part that it does have to play. So thank you, Shannon, for all that you've done for me as an individual and as a friend, and also just with our time together here today. So I love you.
Truly a pleasure. I love you, girl. Heart you.
Okay. Barf. No sugar. Bye.